Well, hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg. I am here today to do the Black History Month book tab, but first I feel like I should acknowledge I've been sitting on the couch for a while in my videos, but it's later in the day. The lighting was a little bit weird, so there's a light over the table, and I wanted to change the pace, so I'm sitting at the table here. You can kind of see we still have our Christmas village up. We never took it down. And you can judge if you want. It just makes me happy. There's a little bit more of it. I don't know if anybody has ever seen this since it's been a while since I filmed here, but this was a gift from our foster son of one of the dogs, Guinness, who is asleep right there, nested in a blanket, because it is really cold outside. I can't really complain because we probably have it better than what's going on in Texas right now. Well, we certainly have it better than what's going on in Texas right now. So if you are in Texas, I hope you're staying warm. In particular, I hope you have power. I hope you're doing well. Hang in there. And it's just a wild situation. Hope you're staying warm. I am. This is a really oversized flannel, which makes it super comfy. It's also really thick. So hope you're staying warm. Now, as I said, I'm here to do the Black History Month book tag. I know I'm a little bit late in the month. People have already kind of done this, or most people have already done this, but I really wanted to make sure I got it in. This was originated by books by Lainez, I think is how you pronounce the name. I will link the video down below. And I really wanted to do it because I think it's important to acknowledge Black History Month, and I'm a big proponent of reading diversely, and especially as a white male living in America. And I just think it's really important to try to participate in this. I do have an audiobook that I'm listening to that will kind of hits the Black History Month brief, and 2 books that I'm reading for the Booktuber prize. But we're going to get to things I am reading for this Black History Month in one of the prompts. So let's just dive right in. The first prompt is, what is a book everyone should be reading during Black History Month? Give one fiction and one nonfiction title. Now, I'm going to take this a step further. I'm going to give you a fiction and a nonfiction title, but I'm also going to give you something from my TBR for both of them. I don't know if it's like an extra bit of inspiration or just for me in my head, helping me organize my reading, but I feel like it's something that will be really helpful. So the fiction book that I'm going to say everyone should be reading this month is The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr., because not only does it hit the brief, but it is a new book and it is wonderful. I just finished it last week, and if you're not familiar, it's about 2 enslaved men who are in love on a plantation in the pre-Civil War era. And what's really interesting about it is that the narrative pivots around people on the plantation. It's not just the story of Samuel and Isaiah, it's the story of all the people around them. Other enslaved people who oversee them, the family who owns all of the enslaved people in the plantation. And by moving around, it is like a chorus of voices about the injustice of slavery and the dehumanizing aspects of it, and how it leaches out your choices and your free will. And it's a really good book. Obviously, it is heavy, but it is a very important book. It is enjoyable to read. And one thing that I particularly like about it is that the writing reminded me very much of Toni Morrison. And that is why my TBR fiction item is Beloved by Toni Morrison. Since her death, I've been trying to catch up on Toni Morrison books. This is one that I have not gotten to. I'm planning to buddy read it at some point this year. It's widely acknowledged to be Toni Morrison's biggest classic, which says a lot. I do know some people who prefer Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon was my favorite book from last year. So this does have a lot to live up to in terms of that. But from everything I've heard about it, I'm just really fascinated to read. It could very well be the great American novel. And I just love Toni Morrison so much. So that's my fiction pick and my fiction TBR pick. My nonfiction book that is essential reading for Black History Month is Overground Railroad by Candace Taylor. If you follow along, I talked about this book a lot in December. It's so good. I learned so much from this book. It basically is about the Green Book and the history of travel in America. Basically, the Green Book was a travel guide for African Americans, because during the travel boom after World War II, a lot of areas were still segregated. There were a lot of sundown towns. So the best way to travel around was in your car, but it was very difficult for African American people to do because they needed to rely on things like the Green Book to help them find businesses, hotels, restaurants that would serve them. And in talking about the Green Book and how it changed and evolved over time and how its uses changed and evolved over time, Candice Taylor really does a great job connecting it to the present and all of our current political troubles or troubles around race. And it's a very smart book, and it does a lot of really great things, and I highly recommend it if you have not read it already. My nonfiction TBR item for essential reading is Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood. I have heard so many really good things about this book. I've been wanting to read it for a really long time and just haven't gotten around to it. It's about him growing up in South Africa. He is the child of a black mother and a white father, and his very existence was supposed to be illegal. And from what I've heard, it's funny. It really sheds a lot of light on colorism and race. And the fact that he grew up in South Africa makes it kind of a different perspective on Black History Month, and I am really looking forward to it. I've heard that audio is actually the way to go for this book, so even though I have a physical copy, I feel like I'm going to actually do it on audio at some point. I just need to kind of get around to doing it. Question number 2. Which Black booktuber would you recommend watching and why? I'm going to recommend 2 because I really enjoy both of their videos, and I think they're kind of pretty low-key and chill and just really fun to follow along with. The first one is Comfy Cozy Up. I will link her channel down below. The second is Erica from The Broken Spine, and again, I will link her video down below. Erica is somebody I did a buddy read with last year, and will potentially do a buddy read with again this year. I really enjoy both of those channels, and like I said, I think they are... I enjoy because I feel like I can just put on their video and it's nice to catch up with them. And I really enjoy that. So check out both of those channels down below. If you like them, subscribe if you haven't already. Prompt number 3. What is your favorite book written by a Black author from an African country? The first one I'm going to go with is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi, which is a really, really wonderful book. And then I'm going to pair it with Transcendent Kingdom by Yaa Gyasi. So if you have not read Yaa Gyasi, what are you doing with your life? Homegoing is wonderful. It is the story of 2 sisters in Ghana who are separated. One stays in Ghana and the other one is taken as part of the slave trade to the United States. Every chapter of the book jumps 1 generation ahead and alternates back and forth between the descendants of the 2 sisters. So every other chapter is in the United States. Every other chapter from that is back in Africa and talking about their descendants. And what it does over time is it reveals the lasting impact of slavery on both continents. And it is a really smart book. Transcendent Kingdom is about Gifty, who has grown up in the United States, but is the daughter of immigrants from Ghana. And it very much deals with religion and science and faith and grief. And it's so good. It does so many smart things. I really can't wait to see what Yaa Gyasi does next. I had to choose 2 books from her. I had to for this. If you have not read either one, please do yourself a favor, check them both out. The other one I want to mention is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite. It takes the form of a sort of thriller and then does so much with that in talking about, I mean, the title of the book is pretty much exactly what it is about. You have 2 sisters, one of them is a serial killer and the other one is not. But because she feels bound to her sister, she keeps getting drawn into the things that she does. And it's fascinating, and I recommend it as well. Prompt number 4, what is your favorite Black classic? So again, I'm going to talk about my favorite Black classic, and then I'm going to talk about a couple of things that are on my TBR, just because I like to make things complicated. I don't know if you follow along, you know that. I love making things complicated. It's what I do. I'm trying not to do that, but for something like this, why not? So the one that I chose, I could have easily taken The Song of Solomon, but I've talked about that book a lot. One I haven't talked about in a while is The Color Purple by Alice Walker. I love this book. Chances are you're already familiar with this book, either from the book itself, which was a Pulitzer Prize winner, or from the 1985 film version with Whoopi Goldberg and Oprah Winfrey. So chances are you already know what this is about. If not, it's about 2 sisters who are separated. What I really find interesting about this is that it's kind of in letters. And in the first half of the book, the letters are addressed Dear God. And then in the second half of the book, they are not. They're addressed to people, or in the latter part of the book. So Dear Nettie and Dear Seeley. It's such a good book. I remember really loving this when I read it. I've always told myself I need to reread this book, and I think my excuse is going to be that I will reread it as part of my Pulitzer Prize project. because it's so good. And I really need to watch the movie again. I haven't seen the movie in more than 20 years. So it's a difficult book, it's a difficult movie, but it is also beautiful and really well written. And so it's a classic that I love. The ones I want to talk about that are part of my TBR, I could easily go with Beloved, but I've already used that for another prompt, so I'm going to go with two different ones. The first is The Women of Brewster Place by Gloria Naylor. So this is a novel in 7 stories. It's kind of interlocked stories about women on Brewster Place. It does have an LGBTQ element about it, which I did not know until maybe a year, 2 years ago, and I still haven't gotten around to it. I'm not likely to do it this month, probably in June, because in June I prioritize LGBTQ books. And last year I prioritized LGBTQ books that focused on Black stories and Black authors. And I don't want to do an entire month of that again this year, but I do want to kind of include that, and this would be a perfect way to nod in that direction. So I'm hoping that I will be able to get to this in the month of June. The Women of Brewster Place by Gloria Naylor. I've heard so many really good things about this from people whose opinion on books I really do respect and trust, and I'm really looking forward to getting to it. The other classic that I want to read at some point is Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. I have only read one book by Zora Neale Hurston, and it was Barracoon, which is not the one that most people think of when they think of her. I mean, it was a good book, but I really need to get around to this one, and I've heard a lot of really good things about it. I've also heard some mixed things, that it can be very difficult to read, but I'm really looking forward to doing it, and I think I've heard so many good things about Zora Neale Hurston over the years that I feel like she's an author I really need to spend some time with at some point. So Their Eyes Were Watching God would be a perfect way to do that. Prompt number 5, which movie / book-to-movie adaptation / documentary would you recommend watching during Black History Month? So I have 2 recommendations because, again, I like to make things complicated. The first one is I Am Not Your Negro. This is a documentary about James Baldwin, and it is phenomenal. By the way, if you have not read James Baldwin, pick up pretty much any of his books. I've read Giovanni's Room, If Beale Street Could Talk, and I think one other that I can't remember right now. Oh no, I think those are the only 2 actually. I need to read more. But yeah, I have Go Tell It on the Mountain. I have The Fire Next Time. So pick up a James Baldwin book. You really can't go wrong with any of them. And definitely watch I Am Not Your Negro. It is such a smart, good documentary that reveals all the reasons why James Baldwin is just an incredible person and definitely worth your time. The other one, if you want something that's actually fictional, Little Fires Everywhere is streaming on Hulu. I would recommend that. It deals with race in a very complicated way. The author is Asian, so there is an Asian element. There's a black and white element in the book. It's really smart, and I think the series actually picks up on a lot of the strengths of the book and gets rid of some of the elements of the book that were not that great. So it's actually in the rare case where it's a better version of the book. And, it does happen. Popularly, people always say the book is better than the movie. This is a case where I think the series is better than the book. And Kerry Washington is phenomenal. I think that's another thing that's really smart about the series. It has Reese Witherspoon, but it recognizes that this is really Kerry Washington's show and just kind of lets her go and do her thing. Prompt number 6, what is on your TBR for Black History Month? Now, if you follow along, you know I am terrible at TBRs. I keep trying to make them as a sort of challenge to myself, and then I don't do well with them because, I don't know, I get stressed or I mentioned earlier, I like to make things complicated. So what I'm doing this month is I've been listening to the audio of Just As I Am by Cicely Tyson. That definitely fits the brief. And I'll talk about it more in my Friday Reads video, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm finding it very fascinating so far. So stay tuned for my Friday Reads video when I'll talk more about it. And then the other 2 books are ones that I am going to be reading as part of the Booktuber Prize. So maybe they're not ones that I would have chosen for Black History Month, but they are things that I need to read for the Booktuber Prize, and for that reason, and because they fit the brief, I'm going to count them as my TBR items for the month. The first is Real Life by Brandon Taylor. I actually have access to an audio of this book, and I kind of put it to the side so I could focus on Just As I Am because I have a physical copy of this. But this is, so if you're not familiar, this was shortlisted for the Booker Prize last year, and it is a story about Wallace, who is in college in the Midwest. He is Black, he is gay, and it's about the discrimination that he faces when he gets there. I'm not very far into this book, and because it's for the Booktuber Prize, I can't tell you what my thoughts of it are anyway, for the part that I have done. But this is something I've heard a lot of really good things about. I'm not far enough into it, so I can tell you I'm still really eager to read this and have high hopes for it. The other one that's part of the Booktuber Prize is Luster by Raven Leilani. I have not even started this one yet, so I can talk about it a little more freely. It's the story of a young Black woman, and one of the things I've really heard about it is that it is very frank about her sex life and her sexuality, and it allows her to be a complicated person, which is not something that a lot of Black characters are given in literature. I've heard some blowback on this book because they think it's a little too much, it's a little risque. I'm eager to read it and try it for myself, and I'm glad that the Booktuber Prize is going to kind of nudge me in that direction. And like I said, those may not have been the two books that I would have chosen to read this Black History Month, but they certainly fit the brief. And like I said, I'm trying to keep things simple in 2021 for my own sake. And so the fact that I will be reading them for the Booktuber Prize makes them perfect candidates for this. And I am getting to listen to Just As I Am by Cicely Tyson. So that is the one that I chose to throw in there. And The Prophets as well, because I started that in January, but I did finish it in February, so I'm counting it. Why not? Prompt number 7, which new releases by Black writers are you looking forward to the most this year? I'm going to go with 3 books for this prompt, and I plucked them directly from my most anticipated books of 2021 video, which I will link down below. The first one is The Final Revival of Opal and Nev by Dawn E. Walton. It comes out March 30th. I'm really excited about that one. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time telling you about it. If you're interested, check it out. And again, I will link the video where I talk more at length about it below. The other one is Filthy Animals by Brandon Taylor. I haven't even finished Real Life, and I'm still just really interested in this one. It's a collection of short stories by him. And the final one is Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead. By the way, Filthy Animals will be out June 22nd. Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead will be out on September 14th. I don't think you can ignore a Colson Whitehead book when it's being released because he's won 2 Pulitzer Prizes for consecutive books that he's written. The first one, of course, The Underground Railroad, and the second one, The Nickel Boys. Will he do it a third time? I doubt it. But again, I'm not going to talk about these 3 books too much. I will link the video where I talk about them more down below in the description box. And those are the prompts. And I'm just, if you want to do this, do it. I'm not going to tag anyone specifically. If you want to do it. Consider yourself tagged. But I would love to hear your answers to any of these prompts. What are you looking forward to? What do you recommend? Any of that. You know what to do. The comment section is down there. And let me know what you're reading, what you're looking forward to, what you might not get in this month. Anything at all. As always, I really appreciate your time, especially if you follow along. If you don't follow along, I hope you enjoyed this enough to hit subscribe and follow along in the future. As always, I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.